Yo, how's it going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, pretty much we're going to be talking about what's next for Bo Nickal, right? Because he is currently, right, 3-0, I think, in the UFC. But yeah, there is definitely something that needs to be said about his opponents, the people that he's facing, and the people that he potentially could beat in the future. Now, I know that a lot of people did not want to see Bo Nickal win for whatever reason at UFC 300. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Bo Nickal was in the main card. And I think that he's getting undeserved hate, in my opinion. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Because I understand, like, the average MMA fan that's not aware of Bo Nickal and what he's done in other combat sports, if you want to call wrestling combat sports. But Bo Nickal's a good wrestler with a lot of accolades already in a different sport. So, in my opinion, I feel like I don't know what the UFC was doing when they decided to add him to the main card. I feel like they kind of messed up with the PR there a little bit, because obviously the UFC fans weren't gonna like that, and they were obviously gonna voice their in the main card. We have former champions in the prelims. We have former champions in the early prelims. Like, why aren't they in the main card, right? It's kind of a head scratcher for me. But in my opinion, I kind of looked at the UFC placing Bo Nickal in the main card kind of like a little bit of an investment, because I do think that the UFC are definitely trying to invest in Bo Nickal. He's going to be like that American superstar fighter from the UFC, or at least that's what they're trying to do. And whether or not Bo Nickal has the abilities to do so is a different subject. But just to sum things up, I do think he has the skills to do it. Now I have some notes right here that I think are pretty important to go ahead and talk about. Now, first of all, like I just mentioned, there's a lot of people that hate Bo Nickal right now because he was in the main card. All right, we get it. I do think that Bo Nickal is going to be one of those people in the UFC that people hate before they love. I think that a pretty clear case of that is someone like Alexander Volkanovski. That I remember this vividly. There was a lot of people out there that did not like Alexander Volkanovski at first, but then they kind of grew to him because Alexander Volkanovski he never came off as kind of a disrespectful fighter, or kind of like a fighter that kind of has to mouth his way into getting some of these fights and just being outright disrespectful. I think that a lot of what made Bo Nickal loved eventually from the MMA world was the fact that he gave us some pretty amazing moments in the octagon, and I feel like something like that is gonna be something very, very similar to Bo Nickal. I just 100% believe it. I do think that he has the skill set to give us some great moments in the UFC, given if he's given the right opponent. So with that being said, I think it's time for Bo Nickal to finally face some real competition. The UFC should be doing their job and doing their own research right on this and placing the right person in front of him. And in this video, pretty much I'm going to be giving you guys my two predictions on two fights that I would like to see Bo Nickal potentially fight in. And yeah, let's go ahead and name some of these fighters. Number one, Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter. Ladies and gentlemen, Rodolfo Vieira is a guy that I want to see Bo Nickal fight, because this guy has a win over Cody Brundage, submission, and he has a win over Arman Petrosian. He lost to Chris Curtis, right, like a couple fights ago by decision. But I think that this is definitely a step up in competition, 100%. And I would love to see what Bo Nickal does against someone like Rodolfo Vieira, who has won the last couple of his fights through submission, right? I think that it would be an interesting matchup. I 100% think it would be an interesting matchup to see Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter, take on the new prospect in the middleweight division, that is Bo Nickal. Another fighter that I would like to see Bo Nickal potentially fight is Anthony Hernandez. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Hernandez. This guy, his last three fights in the UFC have came by by wins. He's in a 3-fight winning streak right now. He has a submission over Roman Kopylov, which we saw earlier this year. He has a win over Edmund Shabazian. He has a win over Marc-Andre Barriault, which I think that some of those guys are pretty decent fighters. And I personally think that Anthony Hernandez versus Bo Nickal potentially is the next fight to make, right? So yeah, those are the two fighters that I would like to see Bo Nickal potentially fight against, is 100% Rodolfo Vieira or Anthony Hernandez as the next challenge for Bo Nickal. If Bo Nickal is able to get through some of those fighters, I definitely do believe that he's going to start fighting some ranked opponents. Maybe they throw someone like Paul Craig at Bo Nickal. Maybe we see somebody like Chris Curtis, right? Jack Hermanson is another guy that I would like to see Bo Nickal fight, right? Right now, the sky is the limit for the Bo Nickal. Maybe even fight someone like Imavov, right? The middleweight division definitely is going to get interesting the more and more developed Bo Nickal becomes in the UFC. And honestly, I'm here for it. There's a lot of people out there that don't like Bo Nickal for whatever reason. But in my opinion, I feel like he's the next big fighter in the UFC. If he's able to become really good in his striking, and trust me, ladies and gentlemen, I know a little bit more about striking than some people do, in my humble opinion, right? Because I am one of those guys that are very deep into development, and I might know a thing or two about who is coaching Bo Nickal and who is developing Bo Nickal in terms of his striking. And yeah, I could just pretty much assure you guys that Bo Nickal is getting some top coaching from some of the best eyes in the fighting industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Bo Nickal is getting set up to be one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC, if he's given a chance to develop the proper way. Now, that's pretty much all I have for this video. It's time for Bo Nickal definitely to start facing some tougher competition, without a doubt. I feel like that win over Cody Brundage, it was a little bit too easy for him, in my opinion. Little bit too easy, right? So definitely some great things to see from Bo Nickal in the future. If you guys have any input on anything that I said in today's video, I apologize if it was a little bit all over the place. I have some freaking notes here, and they are pretty much just scribbled down in a very small writing, but I promise you guys that I will do a better job at organizing my thoughts and organizing my takes so I can give you guys some of the best content out there in terms of MMA. So I appreciate each and every single one of you guys viewing this video. Consider leaving a like, consider subscribing to the channel. It would help me out tremendously. Something that I want to do eventually is do this MMA stuff full time so I could give you guys the best info out there. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a good one and peace out.